the ED1 100% Affordable Housing Initiative? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Los Angeles as their housing element and their mandate from the state of having to provide something like a 500,000 units by 2030. And that is more units per year than they've ever done. It's a huge task. Karen Bass, when she was elected, what she did is she put out Executive Directive 1, short for ED1, and the by right zoning would say you can get 14 units. Let's throw that out the window. You pretty much get unlimited density. And any development standard that's in your way, you can ask for a waiver to waive them away. So if you don't have enough floor area ratio, so any development standard in your way, you can ask for it to be waived out. So it takes projects that might have been 40 units and bring it up to 170 units. And when you have that scale, that's where numbers start to work out because it's spread out over a much larger project with the speed of 7 to 9 months in approval. And another thing is these are ministerially approved projects, so they are exempt from CEQA. Being exempt from CEQA means that people can invest hundreds of thousands of dollars and not have the worry of some neighbor suing us for some frivolous lawsuit, and we're stuck in litigation for years and years and years.
Some of the deals that you're working on, like tell us a little bit about the purchase price, the soft cost, the hard cost estimates.
So the deal actually me and Andrew are working on is 165 units, and it'll be 100% affordable. The purchase price for the land, it's about 22,000 square feet, is $2.8 million. We're looking close to about like $3.2 million in soft costs. Right now, still there's things that we have to divvy up, but we're looking at around $176,000 per unit to build these affordable products. And we want to put affordable housing in good areas, and we want to build quality affordable housing. And then, of course, there's financing costs that we have to incur for. Financing costs are going to range us around $2.5 million as well for, construction loan, soft cost bridge lending, acquisition financing for the property as well. We're holding this construction loan for 24 months, possibly. All that has to go in our capital stack, and altogether we're roughly around $41 million for this whole build out. And we're projecting its value based on Section 8 rents, based on ED1 rents, to value us at anywhere from $60 to $63 million.
Okay, welcome to another episode of Affordable Housing and Real Estate Investing. Today, we have two all-stars. We got Andrew Slocum from our past podcast, and today we have Terry Harris, who, in partnership with Andrew, has a goal of building 1,000 units, but they already have a couple hundred already in the entitlement phase. So today we're going to bring on Terry and Andrew to talk about how their partnership formed together. But more importantly, we're going to talk about the ED1 directive in Los Angeles and what that means for affordable housing developers and how you can potentially take advantage of the program and learn from what Terry and Andrew are doing with their partnership. So Terry, welcome to the show, man. How are you doing today, man?
Man, I'm great. I'm here. Pleasure having me, and ready for this conversation.
Oh, Terry, when I first listened to your story, I was like, whoa, you don't hear about people juggling sports and real estate that often. And when Andrew told me about your story, I was like, all right, we got to bring on Terry. We got to have him share his story because, man, let's just start with the very basics, Terry. How did you even get into real estate?
Mm-hmm. So I was playing in the G League. So I was playing with the Delaware Blue Coats. That was the affiliate of the Philadelphia 76ers. My G League season was 6 months, and during that 6 months, my salary was $35,000. So during that time, in that 6 months, I was always thinking, okay, how am I going to get paid for the next 6 months out of the year? I don't know what's going to happen. And I wanted some control in my life, like whether it be a business venture or something that I knew that I can control and make money from. So I just started reading every single book on real estate that you can name. And I started touring houses, single family houses in Delaware, and I landed on a house in Delaware for $170,000. And I knew about somebody educated me on the FHA 3% down payment. So I came to the closing table with $5,600, and I was able to buy that home and utilize it as a rehab and flip it. And I put about $30,000 into it, utilized credit card debt, some money saved up, and some seller credits from the deal, and sold it home a year later for $320,000. So that was oh wow, real estate actually works. And this is something that I can control. And from there, I knew that, look, I'm 1 foot in, 1 foot out right now. I always had a lingering, like, what happens if I take this serious, like 100%? And I think 3 years later, I took it 100%. And now I'm here, developing, with the aspirations of 1,000 units of affordable housing by the end of 2024.
Wow, what a great story, Terry. Maybe if I were to back up a little, because I want to make it attainable or tactical for the listeners right now. You said you were playing basketball and you started reading a lot of books. Was there a book or 1 or 2 or 3 books that you read that like gave you the knowledge that you think gave you enough to get started?
Yes. The main book was the book on rental property investing by Brandon Turner. That was like that was the first. I don't know how I got lucky, because that was the first real estate book I picked up. And that one was like, not only did it like trigger the mindset of, oh, wow, I can do this no matter what situation I'm in, but it was just like, it like got me to fall in love with real estate. And I read that, got Rich Dad Poor Dad after that, kind of fell on the whole cash flow thing. And then I just started picking up every other real estate book and was just immersed in community, joined the Bigger Pockets community, started speaking to individuals in the area of Delaware. And what was good is, like, as an athlete, everyone would always say, as an athlete, make the connections while you have your jersey on. Because when you do have the jersey on, it's like, it's not like, hey, I'm trying to get a job, or, hey, can you help me out? But it's just like, hey, look, like, this is something I'm genuine about. It's something I'm really appreciate, and a lot of resources and a lot of good people in the area were able to just saw that and were able to help me out.
I instantly laugh when you said that book, Terry, because that's literally the same. That's literally the first book that I read about real estate myself. Literally the same one, not any of the other Brandon Turner books, but that's literally the same one. And I started listening to all the podcasts afterwards. That is so interesting. Yeah. So you got into real estate, you got a flip. Tell us a little bit about how you made that transition into development. Because for a lot of folks, when I tell them about development, it kind of goes over their heads, right? Everybody's more familiar with single family homes. What made you decide to go into development? Because that's not a path that a lot of people even pursue. And what sort of reservations or fears did you have entering or thinking about getting development? Tell us a little bit about that.
I always knew, well, I started investing in Joshua Tree, did some fix and flips. And, the fix and flips are cool. You get to take a house, but it's already like something, and then, make it a bit better. But when I was able to get my first piece of land out there, I thought it was like one of the coolest things to work with the architect, see some plans see some plans as renderings, see them hit on the paper as 2D designs, and then come to life. And Joshua Tree gave me the ability to learn how to develop, because of the barrier to entry of buying land at $18,000 was just relatively small to other markets, and to build a product that's worth $1 million is not something that's too common in places. And I kind of just fell in love with the creative process behind it. And the way I look at it is that the more better and the more experience I get, the bigger my canvas gets of developing. So that's kind of how I got into it. It was really just Joshua Tree. Yeah.
That's such a great story, because I think for audience listening right now, one, you can go pick up a $20 book and get inspired and learn how to get involved. And then from that point onwards, people start thinking about, like, hey, what's my ultimate end goal? And sometimes you don't need to think about the end goal. If you just get started, and then another step reveals itself to you. And just like it did for Terry, he's like, I started falling in love with development, because I started seeing architects and engineering and renderings, and got to see a vision come through. So this is so inspirational, Terry, because I think for a lot of folks right now that are listening, you can absolutely do this. And more importantly, once you start doing it, you might find another passion, and then you feel so much more reinvigorated with real estate, instead of just going down your typical long-term rental, single-family home rentals.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like I was immersed in like a whole different. I was immersed in Airbnb, buy and hold, flipping, wholesaling, and yeah, almost anything that you can name really in terms of like the real estate, umbrella. But then the development was like, oh, okay, like this is actually enjoyable. This is worthwhile. This is like, this is fun. So I was like, you know what, let me put all the eggs in a basket and allocate everything to this. And as I started doing it, it just allowed me to grow, allowed me to partner with people, like-minded individuals like Andrew, and to really grow this thing. And I'm still a strong believer on like, a lot of people are like, oh, diversify. I'm big on specialize on one thing, let it grow like a tree, and then let other things plant and blossom from there.
Okay, now this is going to be a good story because this is another topic that a ton of our listeners have questions about. How do you find partners and what do you look for in a partner? Tell us a little bit about what you were looking for at that point in time, because it sounds like you just got into development. What were you looking for and how did you come about meeting Andrew and figure out that was even like a fit?
Well, Andrew was born and raised in Joshua Tree. So when I started developing in Joshua Tree, there was just a lot of like, I'm new. I never developed before. So there's a lot of questions I had of how, who do I speak to for this? Who do I speak to for a native plant permit or just anything. And I remember, I don't know, I messaged Andrew once on Instagram and this guy sent me a whole paragraph, contact this person, ask for this person, ask for this person. And we didn't even have a full conversation or anything. And I was just like, man, I didn't even know people were like this nowadays, especially in LA or California. So, it was just a genuine, like, always someone that's always, always there, always can just help out. And I remember one call Andrew had, Andrew introduced himself. He's like, hey, I'm just here. I understand that me providing value, although I don't have to see it day one, I just know it comes back to me. And, throughout the years, it became a no-brainer that when I started investing and going into multifamily in Los Angeles, Andrew already had his experience in LA, multifamily. It was like, okay, let's come together. Let's do bigger projects, And I've learned when I started my real estate journey, I wanted to prove myself. I wanted to prove myself. So like my first flips were all done like myself with my capital. And what I've noticed when I started utilizing, my resources, whether it be family members, people who just want to invest, who love the journey, it's allowed me to, partner with people like Andrew, who's so knowledgeable and so resourceful. It's allowed me to scale exponentially and grow. So partnership was something that I had to what do you call it? I had to learn and had to get over the ego of do everything your own. So, and
I completely resonate with that, Terry, because as entrepreneurs, right, we get into this world and you realize like, hey, how do I prove myself? How do I show people that I know what I'm doing? And then props to you for being humble and knowing that you're entering a space that you need someone with a superpower like Andrew of reading ordinances and zoning regulations and everything. Well, hey, you know what, Andrew, let's bring you into the conversation right now. Andrew, tell us a little bit about, you have superpowers, you have development experience. How did you even think that this was the right fit between you and Terry? And what were you looking for in terms of a partnership? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, like Terry had said, he was in Joshua Tree, and that's where I came from. That was like this area that brought me to where I am today. So I felt like, and San Bernardino County and counties themselves are so difficult. All these different like disconnected entities you have to reach out to, like you said, to get a tree permit and all these process. And I've been through that. So I'm like, I took the time, I did the pain. Like I want to give that away so other people don't have to go through that, because it's so frustrating sometimes when you have to go through. So, that was my thing, is I was watching Terry do it. And that as far as a partnership, it's tough because you read the books, but then you have to go out there and do the action. And that's something I saw in him, is that he is out there doing it. And even stuff that he isn't like, crystal clear, this is exactly what you do. He's out there doing it. And that proved to me like, okay, this guy he's in it. And he wants to learn and he's putting in the effort. That to me, in a partnership, it's who puts in the effort. You don't have to know everything. In fact, sometimes too much overlap is an issue, but it's the people who put in the work and have that drive and that passion is what like brought us together. and as he started to go into LA and multifamily, because I love single family, but what I really want to do is provide housing for people, affordable housing for the people. And single family, I love them, but it's two different things, right? And so as I watched Terry come into LA multifamily, I reached out to him like, okay, I booked a room. And we locked ourselves in this room until we had something like a project together. And I came in there with no idea like what was even going to happen. Are we going to be here 10 hours? Am I going to walk out disappointed? And Terry busts out this project. He's like, what about this one? I'm like, oh, this is great. I'll be able to eat dinner tonight. Let's do it. And it was exciting for me to put that together and then to come together as a partner with them. I love putting out the knowledge, but that true partnership. And unlike some people, I'm like a serial entrepreneur for partnerships. I think I have like 8 partnerships, and some people are like, oh, what happens if it goes wrong? It's like, okay, I got 7 more that'll go right. And there's struggles. There's struggles for like who's doing what and the time frame and all that. And it's difficult, but if you want to go far, you got to do it together. You can go fast alone, but you can't go the same distance when you're just doing it yourself. And to hit the impact that we want to have at 1,000 units, I can't do that alone. Terry can't do that alone. It takes so many people and the right-minded people that get together. And, some of the details, truthfully, aren't even flushed out on like how everything is. It's not like we got all the contracts in place and we know everything. It's just working in good faith with each other to know like we want this goal and we're going to work together. And if there is pain points, we discuss it and we have these conversations. We figure out like how to overcome it. And to me, that's how I pick my partnerships, is people that I can have that conversation with. And Terry's one of them. And now we speak, every day, pretty much all day.
Definitely.
I love that. Well, Terry, so tell us a little bit about, how the roles and responsibilities work within the partnership. Like, are you the person underwriting? Are you the person acquiring the deals? Is Andrew the one going to the city? Tell us a little bit about how you guys organize your work within the partnership.
So I think here it's like, look, like Andrew comes in with strengths, I come in with strengths. It's not like, and I think what's good also about a partnership is like I get to learn some of Andrew's strengths, Andrew gets to learn some of my strengths. And I came from a wholesaling background, so I spent a year acquiring assets, good deals for other developers and other investors. And I always knew that wholesaling wasn't the end goal, but it was just to fund my own deals. And now that I have the ability to be in the driving seat and take down these deals for myself, and to like kind of know and find deals and just be creative with them, I like to keep that going. So I maintain, sourcing the deals, finding the deals, a bit of underwriting and majority of the underwriting, and then on the day-to-day operation side of making sure the sites are hitting our unit count, hitting what are we going to sell this building for, what are we our soft costs in line, financing, how are we going to take down these assets, what are we getting the quality, are we getting quality loans for the products, are we in a position to scale, and that's where I kind of come in. And then Andrew just I call it, he's a beast at expediting and getting plans approved. That's his strength, and it's a no-brainer why his company has done the success it has to this date. I remember telling him, I was like, yeah, you're doing the hard work for all these developers. Like, we got to sit on the developer side, and and that's what we're doing now. And I just think the sky's the limit, really.
I absolutely love that. One more question for you, Terry, before I go to Andrew and talk about the ED1 stuff. Terry, what technical skills did you acquire? Did you take like an accounting class, a finance class in college? Like, how did you even go from playing basketball professionally, but then also learning how to develop performers and underwrite deals and decide what's a good deal even look like? Tell us a little about some of the skills that you acquired and how did you acquire that?
I like to call myself like the street basketball player in this game, where like there's a kid who gets like a great trainer, and the trainer obviously trains him to be great. And then there's another kid who's just like playing on the park every day. And like when a good guy comes in, he learns a little bit from him, and then another good guy comes in learning. So that's kind of the real estate journey was just like, I'm just learning wherever I can and like picking up here and picking up there, picking up there, and then just reading a lot of books. And I think like, every little, I think like two months ago, our main thing was like, okay, how are we going to structure the debt and equity for this deal? It's something that me and so myself I've never done it before. I'm not really sure what the family offices or institutional investors are truly looking for. And so I just started reading a couple of books on that. Then I started speaking to individuals who've done it before, and just getting that type of knowledge. And I think in this game, when you're developing on a high level, there are a lot of books. There's some books on it, but I'm seeing like a lot of this knowledge is really execution based that we're learning from. Just a lot of knowledge in this game in general is execution based. So that's kind of how I've been really learning a lot. And I study other companies. I study other people doing it. And if Andrew sends me some pro formas, I kind of like take a little bit, like we need this in ours, we need this in ours, we need this in ours, and just try to make it a little bit better.
Man, that's such a great story. And I think you're absolutely spot on. Nothing beats experience of actually executing and just doing the thing. And that's really how you learn. And then you were humble enough to, again, ask the right questions. So thank you so much for sharing about your background. Thank you so much for sharing how your guys' partnerships work, because sometimes people, if they don't have an example to refer to, it's almost like this nebulous idea that they can't wrap their heads around it. If they can't wrap their heads around it, they never get started. So thank you for sharing those stories. Let's go into the ED1 initiative. Andrew, let's bring you back in here and just talk about this initiative really quick. What is the ED1 100% affordable housing initiative? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Los Angeles has their housing element and their mandate from the state of having to provide something like a 500,000 units in the next, by 2030. And that is more units per year than they've ever done. It's a huge task. We also have a homeless issue. We also have the Olympics coming to LA. So there's a lot of fight that LA has to have. And bringing in Karen Bass, when she was elected, she realized, okay, we have to do something about this. And what is stopping housing from being done? And really quickly, she had those conversations and found out that the timeline for approvals is a major issue. The arbitrary and the planning rights on what you can build in places that they're not involved with health and safety. You still have a building that goes through building, but it's like, oh, you have to have 30 feet back, or you have to do these things that make it so that building housing just doesn't make sense. And that's why a lot of municipalities have these market rate or luxury product being built, because that's the only thing that can be financed and be built for the cost of what it takes to do this stuff. So she saw the writing on the wall. Was like, okay, we have to do some things to change this. What she did is she put out Executive Directive 1, short for ED1. And as it was first proposed, it's like a vacation on planning rights. The by right zoning, where say you can get 14 units, let's throw that out the window. You pretty much get unlimited density. And any development standard that's in your way, you can ask for a waiver to waive them away. So if you don't have enough floor area ratio, I think some of our projects are like a 120% bonus or even more than on a floor area ratio. So any development standard in your way, you can ask for it to be waived out. So it takes projects that might have been 40 units and bring it up to 170 units. And when you have that scale, that's where numbers start to work out, because it's spread out over a much larger project. Over 40, if you're working on a hillside and it's going to be $2 million to make it a viable project, that's not going to work out as well. But if it's cut over 170 units, you have that spread to make something that wouldn't have work out. So that with the speed of 7 to 9 months in approval. And another thing is, these are ministerially approved projects, so they are exempt from CEQA. There is some pushback. Anyone who's really in this will see that there maybe is some lawsuits that are happening for that, but I think a lot of it's fear tactics. But being exempt from CEQA means that people like Terry and I can invest hundreds of thousands of dollars and not have the worry of some neighbor suing us for some frivolous lawsuit, and we're stuck in litigation for years and years and years. And that's another safety net to actually want us to build this, because we don't have to have that fear of something we don't have control over.
Well, let's walk through the steps really quick, because you just went through the density bonuses. That makes a ton of sense. But I did not know that you were also, quote unquote, protected from frivolous lawsuits. So let's walk through the normal process of development, pre-dev and development and all the land and entitlements. Walk us through like each part of the process to get a project approved, and tell us a little bit about what's involved in each stage. How long does each stage typically take, and what does this ED1 directive do for you guys in terms of expediting the timeline?
Sure. So yeah, first step is finding a project. Where are we going to locate it? So it's that looking up that land or that existing building and figuring out what is allowed there by right, meaning what is the zoning and the characteristics of a lot allowed to be built there. Does it allow for multifamily? Is it industrial? Is it 14 units? Is it what can that be? And you start to look at the feasibility of will a project fit there and what it looks like. And you don't necessarily have plans fleshed out, but you can do the math and say, okay, we can get 14 units here. This is about what it's going to cost. And you can do a very quick analysis to see if it even makes sense based on what the cost of the land is. So we're taking in these metrics of what we can build and what our costs are and getting a really rough number. Will this, what we call it in the industry, is will it pencil? Does this make sense? If it passes that first test, then we look for our design team and we start putting together our architect. And in our case, we are our land use consultants in a way, but you want to also have that team in there. And then oftentimes you have attorneys as well to try to protect you and shield you from pending lawsuits, or if it's a labor union labor that comes in and wants to change your project, just to have those resources. So you have your project, you have your architect team, you start your design process. That can take 2 to 3 months, depending on how big the scope of the work is. Once you have that, for larger projects, you submit it to planning to start getting your planning rights. And that process typically can be, say, 9 months, just to know that you can do this on a planning standpoint without having your structural engineering, your mechanical, your electrical, the rest of the in-depth plans that will how the building will be built. That process can take 2 to 3 years in order to get a project approved, and you're just submitting and waiting for responses and then corrections, and it's not necessarily how long you take to get it back. That's just the queue. And all projects are somewhat in the same, or were in the same queue. If you were doing an affordable housing project, you're right in line with a luxury, with an ADU. You're in this line. It didn't matter who you are or what you're doing. And that 2 to 3 years, or oftentimes for bigger projects, 5, 6, 7 years. It's not unheard of whatsoever to have 7-year entitlement process. When building these things, they're 14 months, 16 months. The time to get the product approved takes exponentially longer than it takes to build.
Oh, man. So let me just summarize for auto followers as the following. You said design phase about 2 to 3 months, assuming you already have a project. Then you're getting your planning rights. That takes 9 months. And if you're getting your structural engineers and your mechanicals, your MEPS, that could take another 2 to 3 years. Wow. Within that phase, before we get to the updated timelines, where do people typically, for lack of a better word, get sued? So that from neighbors or whatever, when they're trying to stop your project, where in that phase do you typically see those issues come up? And how does the ED1 kind of protect against that?
Yeah, a lot of these projects that were just so typical go through planning commissions. They go through city council and public hearings. And you are required to do a public hearing. And I don't think there's anything wrong with public hearings, because you want things to fit in the neighborhood. But that's when you're opening yourself out to everyone to have their input on your design and what you're building there. And I wouldn't say oftentimes all that stuff necessarily reflects to what's in reality, to what you can do and what you can't do. Something like saying it's too tall and taking a floor off might be the death sentence. They're very things that may aesthetically be pleasing, but it's a death sentence. And we're not trying to design horrible boxes. We're trying to do the best we can, but we have metrics that we have to comply with, and we also have to have it be built. If we can't even build it, then there's really no point. And so it's with that submittal process, those hearing process where you are open to liability, and those lawsuits can just stop you at your tracks. And oftentimes, 2 to 3 years before you even figure out where you're at. And a lot of times developers just quit and they say, okay, it's not worth it. Let's go to the next place, or let's try to do something different.
Wow. Okay. Well, now with the ED1, what does that typically do in terms of time savings for each one of these phases?
So the difference being the type of submittal, which was discretionary, where there's a discretionary hearing process, and ED1 is a ministerially approved process where it's saying if you do this, this, and this, and fit these boxes, you're exempt from that public hearing and that city council and that design review process. And so now you're exempted from that California Environmental Quality Act liability to where you can get sued. And because of that, Executive Directive 1 has also created an affordable housing department within planning, within building and safety. So you're no longer in that pile behind my 50 ADUs and my luxury. You're at the top of the pile. And that makes a massive difference on that review time period. And what we're seeing is you submit your planning application, and within 10 days, oftentimes the minute you pay your fee, you're assigned a planner. And then within 10 days, you get corrections or you're approved if you got this right. And that's unheard of. I submitted an ADU, and I think it was 20 days before I got my application to pay the fees. And that's not even, this is for a 400 square foot unit, let alone a 170 unit building. That's extremely sped up. Then when you're doing your complete review, we're seeing 7 to 9 months from submittal to full approval. Like you could pull your permits and start building.
That is an amazing, huge time difference. And just for the folks that are listening right now, I mean, think about all the expenses that you're incurring, right? If you took debt out to buy the land, you're incurring interest expense every single day. I mean, there's all these fees and interest expenses, and this is why development projects are very expensive, right? For everybody's listening. It's not free. You got to pay labor, pay the architects and engineers to get your plans together. Then all of a sudden, you also got to figure out how to pay the salaries for your own development company while you're getting the projects approved. And then you have to get all your permits and be able to pull the construction permits. So there's so many steps involved here. Andrew, have you guys had any success because of this initiative yet? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, we have our applications in. We have our projects assigned to the planners, and we are moving up forward with all of them. So our structure, these are, I wouldn't say we haven't gotten RTI plans yet, but we're in the mix and we are seeing the change in the speed of this. But even bigger than that, we very likely wouldn't be doing these projects in the same way. 2 of our projects were luxury housing that Terry was doing. And now he had completely changed the process of that to be affordable housing, which I think is incredible that this program took what would have been luxury housing in LA and turned it into affordable housing. Like what the heck? That's unheard of, that people would change to do like affordable housing instead of luxury.
And I think this is where I really want people to pay attention to. When you're in an environment or interest rates have gone up so much the last couple of years, and loan products have completely different. Like you could have gotten a loan for 80% LTC even back in the day, but nowadays you might be at 50%, 65% loan to cost. But when you start going towards an affordable deal, now all of a sudden you might get benefits from expedited approvals. You might get benefits from qualifying for a HUD-insured loan that might get you to 85% LTC. If you listen to any of our past podcasts, you might be eligible for financing it through tax-exempt bonds, as an example. And now all of a sudden you are doing good, but then you are also opening up the amount of options for you. And to a developer, that's really, really important. You need to have multiple ways. I mean, when we look at deals, we try to make sure we have 3 ways to finance a construction, because you never know if someone might not come through. That's an unfortunate reality when you're dealing with such large projects. Now, Andrew, all of this sounds great. It almost sounds too good to be true. What kind of issues have you guys run into with this approval process? Have you guys run into any issues?
Well, we're on a time crunch. The city is, when the executive directive is not necessarily a fully codified in the books in the LA City Municipal Code. So what it was is like an emergency act that we're going to work on until we got to that point. And in the process right now is a new city ordinance that will change what Executive Directive 1 works, and what has been said is put guardrails on it. And I'm not quite sure something that's been successful as what this is with so many applications and so many units being proposed that never has before, why guardrails is a thing that we need to consider. But the new change will limit the amount of incentives and waivers that you can apply for. It also will extend the deed restriction timelines. And very likely many of the projects that are proposed now, they may be protected if they have their rights vested, but they wouldn't have been able to submit with the way that the new code will change. So many of these projects won't even get to the starting line, let alone the finish line. And we are up against a time crunch for our larger project to get that approval from planning before that change happens in order to be protected from that. Because we're using, I think we're at 11 total incentives and waivers. And I believe the limit will be 5. So that means many of these development standards that make this project work, we have to comply with them, and that complying with it will make our project no longer be viable on a financial standpoint.
Oh, explain that a little bit more, Andrew. You mentioned that you guys are at 11 total incentives or waivers, and a new ordinance might limit that to 5. Give us a couple of examples to make it real for the audience. Like, what is an example of an incentive or a waiver, so that the audience can understand, like, hey, what is truly going away? Because that might be a little bit harder for people to understand.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the waivers that we're asking for is for front setbacks. Say we have a requirement for a 30-foot front setback. We can do a reduction to even 0 setback. Side setbacks, the setback for some of the zoning incrementally increases by height. So you might be at 5 feet, but with every floor after, say, the second one, it's another foot and another foot. So you end up building a building that's like a pyramid and increasingly gets smaller. Floor area ratios, you might be limited at only going to, say, 30,000 square feet of buildable area, but we need to be at 90 to get these 100. So an increase in floor area ratios, a reduction in open space. So you don't have to have balconies or these more expensive things that are nice, but as far as, providing housing, aren't necessary. What else? For some instances, there may be a requirement for, even though we're not doing retail, for 12 to 14 foot ceilings, because they want to have a commercial overlay zone so that commercial could be on the first floor when we're not proposing commercial. So you have to build a 14-foot high ceiling for residential units that don't need 14-foot high ceilings. So just additional costs that aren't needed. And you start layering these things up, and that's what makes these projects work to be privately financed. And if you take that away in those 13, we have to pick 5. It's very hard to pick what those 5 are that we're going to have, and if it even still makes sense when you're limited to that 5.
Wow. Because I mean, just for everybody understanding, like, we keep talking about density, but I hope everyone's following. The reason you need density is because you need additional units. You need the additional rent, because when you're building all these properties, you have to get construction loans and you have to get in debt. And in order for you to get approved for these loans, you got to have enough income coming in every single month to pay off the debt service every single month. And if you don't have enough units, then chances are your debt might exceed what you're collecting in terms of income. So I want to make sure the audience follow that, and why all these issues that we're talking about. How far do the setbacks need to be? How many floors can you get? This all affects the number of units, and in turn affects your income, and in turn affects your ability to pay, because no one's going to lend you money if they don't think they're going to get their money paid back. So I want to make sure people are able to follow that. Now, Andrew and Terry, you guys have gone through this process a little bit. What lessons have you guys learned so far from from going through this? And Andrew, I'll go to you first, and then I'll go to Terry to get some of his lessons learned, and then maybe we can go deep dive into a project afterwards.
Yeah, I think for us it was we had just done a review of what we submitted, and it's close, but it's definitely not there yet. So I'm happy we submitted it so that we're into that vested rights. But I guess the lesson learned is it's good to submit it, even though we're not fully like gone through. And this plan says like, just as anecdotally, one of our beds sticks out the building in our submittal set, and it's definitely not possible to have a bed hanging outside of the building. But that's not really going to be an issue. But it's just like get it in and get it started, because we do have a deviation range of 20% that we can be wrong, and so that margin of error allows us to be quicker and to move faster because we can correct things on the fly. So not like submitting the perfect set, going in there and putting it in there. And we're having these capital calls with investors that have never looked at privately financed affordable housing. They understand tax credits or they do tax exempt bonds, but this conversation, they were scared of California, and now we're talking about California affordable housing, and they're like, oh, what is this? And having those conversations, it's something we're currently learning how to educate our fellow limited partners, investors on, like, come back to California. Look at LA. It actually makes sense. And these projects, I'll let Terry talk on this, but his new affordable projects make more financial sense than the market rate ones that he was looking at.
Yeah. So Terry, tell us a little bit about this. One, you made a pivot from luxury to affordable, but then what else have you learned throughout this process?
Yeah. So I think really just being efficient in the pre-development phase. Like every day we're also speaking with the contractors. Andrew's worked with HTA Construction, who develops for one of the largest affordable housing developers in Los Angeles, and we're value engineering. I think we're doing honestly an amazing job value engineering. Where every day our plans, schematic plans, floor plans are being sent over. We're getting pre-consulting. Pre-construction consulting from other great resources. So we're really just being efficient with this build as the best way we possibly can, and we're learning how to build on lots that are your typical flat lots. There's one of our, actually, I think all of our lots are kind of hillside. So what we've learned is it's not about taking all the dirt out of those lots and just planting our building, but it's really building with the terrain, building with the topography of the lot. And so I've been learning efficiency in these buildings, efficiency to make these buildings work, make sure they pencil out, making sure our costs don't go through the roof. We're getting construction bids already, and we're not, and we're still have a bit of ways to go, but just in that, I've been learning so much about how the builds can stay in the price that we want them to stay, and making sure our numbers are the same when we put a shovel in the ground.
And Terry, did you have a construction background? Have you ever built a building before?
So my first house that I built, my first two, I built them owner builder, and I'll say it, I over budgeted the hell out of these two. The first one, and I was just like, I can't ever do this again. And now that's why value engineering means so much to me, because it's just I want to know, I don't want to exceed those prices. I want to get GMPs, guaranteed maximum price on our construction. I want to know exactly where we're at. I don't want to have to say to a construction lender or an investor, hey, we over budgeted again. And it's just something that I've learned, like the street basketball player from failing, and sometimes those are the greatest lessons. So
all right. I mean, this is what I want to call out for folks, right? I mean, for folks that want to get in development, you don't need to be the expert. I think the overall theme from this conversation has been you find partners that have the experience that you're looking for that makes you feel more at ease, like Andrew with his expertise around zoning, regulations, getting projects entitled. And you got someone like Terry who's into the numbers, but then also knows how to talk with all the builders to make sure that they're not overcharging him. But I'll be honest, I'm not a structural engineer. I have no idea how deep the foundation should go. I'll be honest. But when we get in development and you're able to raise capital or find financing and put the deal together, you can all of a sudden afford to hire sort of the best of the best to be on your team, because that's how you create an all-star team. And I hope people really learn from you, Terry, on this one. It's like, hey, you've had some bruises and scars from your first couple of deals, and you learn from it, and then you continue applying forward. And I hope people really, really resonate with that. You guys really got to understand, like, when you take these small steps, you learn more, and then all of a sudden you become better in every aspect. So Terry, thank you for sharing for that. And well, let's just talk through some of the deals. Like, walk us through at a very high level some of the deals that you're working on. Like, tell us a little bit about the purchase price, the soft cost, the hard cost estimates, and what do you guys ultimately expect the project to be worth at the end of the day?
Right. So the deal actually me and Andrew are working on is 165 units, and it'll be 100% affordable. And right now, the purchase price for the land, it's about 22,000 square feet, is $2.8 million. And that's just for the land itself. Soft costs, we're looking close to about like $3.2 million in soft costs. And our hard costs, we're in a range right now, still, like, there's things that we have to divvy up, but we're looking at around $176,000 per unit to build these affordable products. And that we've seen some people building them for cheaper. We see some people building, that we've actually only seen people building them for cheaper, but we wanted to put our bid here as we want to be as conservative as possible. And we're also not putting the bare minimum on these affordable housing products. Me and Andrew's thing is also, we want to put affordable housing in good areas, and we want to build quality affordable housing. And then of course there's financing costs that we have to incur for. Financing costs are going to range us around $2.5 million as well for, construction loan, soft cost bridge lending, acquisition financing for the property as well. That's another thing that, when I first started off, I was like, okay, a construction loan's a construction loan. But, those months we're holding this construction loan for 24 months possibly. All that has to go in our capital stack, and altogether we're roughly around $41 million for this whole build out. And we're projecting its value based on Section 8 rents, based on ED1 rents, to value us at anywhere from $60 to $63 million. Untrended, that's all based on today's rent. So, with that being said, we like to stay within around like we like to stay at least a 30% profit margin from cost to the valuation of the building. I've seen that when it's at about 30, it gives us a little buffer for contingency. And then it also allows these, when we go to family offices to raise equity, it gives them a good IRR on a 3-year basis to really find this deal attractive.
Wow. And just for full disclosure, we're not soliciting any investments on this call. This is not investment advice, but man, that is it's almost a mind-blowing number when people really think about it, and they think about affordable, right? They think about the ghetto, they think about guns, drugs, and drama, but you guys are building these in beautiful areas. And on top of that, it's a brand new construction, something that people will walk in there with dignity and pride and be proud of where they're living. And all at the same time, you're able to make a profit for your time and your energy and your efforts. Man, this is such a great story, Terry, Andrew, and I'm so glad to welcome you both onto the podcast to talk about this project, because not a lot of people know about this. And that's really what's missing in the world today. It's like, you can do good and make money. That is so cool. Well, Terry, let me ask you this question. This is a question that we ask everybody on a podcast. I asked Andrew this last time he was on a call, and this is, there's no right or wrong answer. Why do you think affordable housing, particularly the lack of supply, is so hard to solve for?
That's a great question. I honestly think I think it's it's like a really simple equation that's been overly complicated in the most craziest way. It's like, why is Los Angeles unaffordable? It's a simple supply and demand. LA has a lot of a homelessness issue. Why? It's really just a lot of people just cannot afford to live here. And I think when more supply starts to come in, more affordable housing starts to come in, it's going to ease a lot of the rents. I think when people see the buildings that we create, and then you look at some new market rate buildings, if we're getting 2,000 for our one bedrooms, and this market rate is charging today 3,100. The difference between our building and that building is not much different. So what's going to happen? Obviously, that building is going to have to ease up their rents once more of these ED1 buildings or more affordable buildings start coming into place. And, when rents start to ease, obviously home values are going to start to ease up, and supply is just going to keep increasing. And I think that's going to help a lot of people who struggle to live in Los Angeles, by just your average minimum wage or average job even. So I think it's just a simple supply and demand thing, really.
I mean, I love that answer. I thank you for that answer, because one of the missions for this podcast is, one, we're trying to dispel all the stigma associated with affordable housing, but more importantly, we're collecting pieces to the puzzle, man. This is such a massive problem. And there's going to be so many ways to solve this problem. And frankly, we might need to tackle all of them in order to solve this problem. So I'm really blessed and grateful that you and Andrew came on the show and talked about the projects you're doing and how you guys are increasing supply for the Los Angeles market. Andrew, any last words? I know there's tons of things going on. Any last words that you have for the audience members that might be listening today, and what you would recommend for them to do if they want to take advantage of something like this?
Yeah, I want any listener to also be an advocate in your neighborhood. So, speak up on your planning commission, your design review, and support projects that make sense, because the voice of the opposition is so loud, and they get to take off at lunch at 2:00 or 12 to come have this. But even if you send in an email or a letter, support housing projects. And also, we had a call earlier today that this executive directive one is an example that they're looking at in other places like San Diego, like Santa Monica, or maybe even the state of California. So we want to see this live on in an iteration is to be an example throughout California, throughout the United States, as a way that has been very successful to create affordable housing. And this is not a LA problem. We're working on the LA, but this is a California problem. It's a United States problem. It's very likely a global problem that we have created these barriers to make it to where we can't build. And we've been building housing for hundreds, thousands of years, however long people have had a house where they made it out of the mud and the sticks. So it's not that much different. It's just we've created this system that is so hard. And now we need to backtrack that and provide housing for people. And even if it is sometimes giving more value to housing instead of cars. These things that we have to look at as society changes, to be an advocate in your neighborhood, to join a group and to speak on these things and be a supporter. So people like me, you, Kent, Terry, we can provide housing for people without having to lose our shirts and take a risk that just doesn't make sense, and that we go somewhere else and do it instead.
Well, thank you so much, Andrew, for sharing that. And Andrew, if people want to reach out to you, where can they follow you? Where they can get more information about your projects?
Yeah, we have our Instagram is pretty much the most important one for me. That's the only social media. So it's the Instagram, Andrew, ANDREWR, Slocum, SLOCUM. One of our posts on there has the Court Street project. Terry's brother, Tobias, is a partner in that. And I have never, he had shared the story, and I had never seen my phone blow up like that. I had to turn it off because it was vibrating for like 7 hours straight. And I had to turn off notifications, but it's a beautiful building that we're doing, and you can see it on our Instagram. And what I like to share is what we're doing day to day. So you might see me under a 2-story building, converting it into an ADU, or a capital call or sharing a podcast like this, that's a great place to follow what we're doing. And then also reach out to me. I respond pretty quickly, and I'm there to help, to take a call if I can help you get to what you can do so that you can do things like what we're doing and talking about here.
Love it. Make sure you guys give Andrew a follow. And Terry, where can people follow you and find out more about you?
Yeah, main source Instagram, Terry Harris 15. I like to post my projects and as much information as I can, and post a little lifestyle stuff at the same time. And then LinkedIn as well. I'm like starting to get a little more active on LinkedIn, and I found it a good resource for just connecting with a lot of like-minded individuals. So Terry Harris on LinkedIn, and those are my two main resources.
Well, thank you, Terry, and thank you, Andrew, for you both coming on. And again, thank you both for what you guys are doing. Without people like you guys, I would have never had the home I grew up in. So seriously, sincerely, thank you so much to both of you. And thank you for coming on to the podcast. And I can't thank you guys enough for coming on here and sharing so much gems and gold and information and inspiration for a lot of people. So I can't wait to bring you guys back on to catch up on your project and see where you guys are at in 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, excited.
We'll have to do a live one where we're doing a hard hat tour with you, Kent, and we can do it that way. I love it.
That would be amazing. I love that. All right. And we are out.